What's your views on Korea right now? Because, we've long talked about this Korea discount, but we have a chart that kind of shows what we've been seeing when it comes to earnings. And the Kospi is still the only Asian benchmark here where we have seen analysts slash their earnings estimates. Earnings haven't been very good as well. I mean, how are you viewing the market in particular?
Yeah, I think we're neutral on Korea, and actually because of the fact that earnings revision downwards is actually not going to be positive for the equity markets going forward. We're looking at about 12% growth for Asia ex-Japan as a whole this year, and I think Korea comes in well below the 12% that we're actually looking at. And therefore, from an economic standpoint, from an earnings growth standpoint, Korea is clearly not attractive from that perspective. And the Korean market is basically dominated by just a couple of big chaebols, and if they don't do well, the Korean market doesn't do well, unfortunately.
Kelvin, this is Ramy in New York. Sticking to South Korea, I've been taking a look at the won, the South Korean won, and it's actually apparently a kind of safe haven play over the past 6 or 7 days. Can you explain that, especially with it being so close, of course, to its border, North Korea, and then looking ahead, based on any expectation out of Singapore today, possible trajectory?
Well, I think the South Korean won is likely to be pretty well supported over the next couple of sessions, given the fact that the summit is actually happening now. Historic, first time the US leader is meeting a North Korean leader. So positive, the sentiment is really positive. But other than that, from an economic perspective, there's hardly anything to actually move the currency. So it could be well supported for the next couple of sessions, but after the dust settles where this summit is concerned, again, the fundamental questions on the South Korean economy will have to be answered. And at this point in time, it doesn't look very, very promising in terms of relative performance against the other Asian currencies.
All right. In terms of Korean stocks that may or may not move, Kelvin, one thing that I always have remembered is that when North Korea fires a missile, South Korean defense stocks do rise. In terms of moving ahead here, if there is some kind of agreement, some kind of deal made, could we say maybe if we delve into those stocks that that might be something that would have a negative outlook?
Perhaps on a short-term basis, definitely. If, again, the rapprochement happens, then on a short-term basis, clearly, sentiment is not going to be positive, unfortunately, for these defense stocks. But as you've noticed from previous episodes of conflict or so-called conflict between the North and the South, these conflicts have never had a long-term embellishment on the markets. They tend to get away with it pretty quickly, and then after that, life goes on where the equity markets are concerned. So I don't think this is going to affect the markets other than some of the defense stocks in Korea itself.
But I think just months ago, there were a lot of optimistic analysts out there that were saying it's time to buy reunification, that there was plenty of opportunities when it came to infrastructure, natural resources, and these two Koreas and businesses operating here back and forth. Is that still a long-term play, potentially?
I'm skeptical about that because the bill for reunification is going to be huge. Right? The Germans are still paying for that reunification bill until now. Right? Gross debt to GDP in Germany is about close to 70%.
Yeah.
And that's just after, this is like about 30 years after the reunification itself.
The divergence between the Koreas is even larger than that.
Exactly,
yeah.
Right? And North Korea is in far worse shape than what East Germany was back in the 1990s. So I think people who play that are getting carried away too much where reunification is concerned. So I don't think so.